Right now, we'd like to hear your review on a scale of 1 to 10. How did the 12th Parliament perform, and what lessons can the 13th Parliament learn? At Trevor Mbiji at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Daybreak. Honorable John Bad is still with me here, Minority Leader. Caleb Kositany, Member of Parliament for Soy, is still with me as well. And Philip Nyakundi, Mzalendo Trust, Head of Policy and Partnership, is also with us. In fact, Nyakundi, I'll start with you on this. How would you review the performance of the 12th Parliament in general on a scale of 1 to 10, and why are you giving them the score you're about to give them?
Thank you very much, Trevor. On the scale of 1 to 10, I would give Parliament, and when I say Parliament, I mean both houses, that's the National Assembly and the Senate. For me, I'll give them a 4. And the reason why I'll give them a 4, Trevor, is that sometimes we also don't get to see the work that goes into Parliament because of maybe it's a lot in terms of, if you look at the Senate, the Hansard reports, there's quite a lot of work that goes into the work of Parliament, and it is really a congested space. So even as we blame Parliament for having not lived to the expectations, I think there are also work that Parliament has also done very well. Just a brief highlight, Trevor, in terms of what we have tried to look. We are coming up with a scorecard, and that will be coming out from tomorrow until the end of this month, where we will be trying to assess in detail how Parliament has performed, especially this 13th house as compared to other houses. But if I can just highlight briefly, Trevor, in this 12th house, the National Assembly has had to handle 345 bills as we speak. It has laid 2,860 papers in the House. It has discussed, or some questions that have been put forward are 1,090 questions. So, and it has had almost 215 petitions to handle during this period. And that has been done within 341 sittings of that House. On the other hand, the Senate has handled 207 bills. It has handled 220 motions, 362 petitions, and 1,505 papers laid before it, and it has had 251 and 251. It has had 251 sittings in this House. So if you look at also the agenda that has been in the House, I'm tempted to give them a 4. And I'm really hoping that we could do better. But maybe if, I don't know if this is the point you want me to highlight, why I've given them that score, and what is lacking, Trevor.
Now, I'll come back to you and to give us the reasons why. Let's hear the scores from Kositany and Badi first. Kositany, how would you rate yourselves on a scale of 1 to 10?
I think Nyakundi is being unfair to Parliament because Parliament, a lot of work, and maybe 70% of the work of Parliament is done in parliamentary committees, which is not is in the Hansard reports, but is not out there for debate. And I think that is where we need to give credit to members of Parliament, where they spend hours sitting in committees and preparing what eventually comes onto the floor of the House as a bill. Parliament has performed. To the best of my ability, I think we'd give Parliament a score of 7 because we have managed to push forward things that affect the common mwananchi. We failed miserably when we diverted and let our independence be eroded and started prosecuting matters that were not of benefit to the electorate, the people who sent us. The biggest failure of this 12th Parliament was the BBI debate that was brought into the House. That we failed miserably because we were being controlled by outside forces. The executive really interfered with, brought in their feet and muscle into the National Assembly. And we ended up not debating based on what we believed in. We were debating based on instructions, that external instructions. That may contribute to why Nyakundi is giving Parliament a 4. But in terms of performance, I think the leader of minority here would agree with me. The other failure of Parliament, as I had said earlier, was the death of the opposition.
Okay.
The opposition actually completely failed. In fact, I remember telling Buddy one time in the sittings that he's more of a leader of majority. In fact, I was referring to him as leader of majority because he was now prosecuting government policy and matters, unlike previously before the handshake. And that really brought confusion into the House and affected the performance of Parliament.
All right. What is your review, Honorable John Buddy? And were those the greatest failures, like what Constantine is highlighting, the BBI and the death of opposition?
For me, I think in judging Parliament, we need to look at the role of Parliament. We have basically 4 functions. People talk of 3, but I call it 4 functions of Parliament. Number 1 is legislation, as we are all aware. So so we need to first ask, in terms of legislation, how many critical bills have been left pending by Parliament without being dealt with. I don't think we have too many bills which are very critical. Bills will always be there, and legislative process is a continuous process. Yeah. Legislation is a continuous process, so you can't say that Parliament must finish all these and end here. There will be parliaments until Jesus comes back. There will be all elections until when we are gone. So Parliament, the 12th Parliament has done quite well in terms of legislation, and I will tell you that I think we passed about 114 which were centered into law, bills which became became acts of Parliament, and that's a great number of legislation. In fact, it's not even about the number; it should be the quality of what we. And this is the Parliament that passed the issue, the bill on NHIF to reform and restructure NHIF, with the coffee bill, the issues of green economy. We set up the marine guards, etc. Things which touch on human life. Remember, this is also the same Parliament that thought about the artists in this country, which have been forgotten forever. This is the same Parliament that has resisted the changes on VAT, which would be hurting the common mwananchi. And we have done it a number of times, not just in one financial year. The executive has always been, will always have an appetite to raid into our pockets and take money, even when we are poor. But it is the role of people's representative to deter that. And so in terms of legislation, this Parliament has done so well. Again, also on oversight, well, there could be issues here and there that we could have done better. Issues of budget. I want to say, I mean, the third function I know is the representation. We have represented our people. You've heard of questions being raised, petitions, and all that. On the last function of Parliament, that is budget making process. This is the first Parliament in 2020-2021 that rejected and returned a budget back to the executive because we felt it was not compliant to the current challenges or the challenges that were obtaining then, the issues of COVID. And it was returned by this same Parliament that Honorable Constantine is saying without opposition. I wanted just to tell my brother here that we are in a presidential system. Parliament should oversight the executive as a unit. And I will tell you that the time that is cherishing, I was in the 11th Parliament. He wasn't there. But I will tell you that to me, this Parliament was more responsive because in the 11th Parliament, as who were in court, we could talk and no one listens. At least in this dispensation, you could see people, people coming, heads coming together from across the political divide. The other time it was clear, tyranny of numbers, whether it is, there was a time, Trevor will tell you, I walked into Parliament and we were debating supplementary budget. And there were shouts from the Jubilee side then, which was TNA and URP, that pass the budget, you are wasting our time, this is a government agenda. And I rose to speak. And I said, do you know in this budget that you are passing, you are reducing CDF. You are taking away 5 billion from CDF fund. Everybody was shocked. And that is the time they started now engaging in discussing that supplementary budget and made amendments and made changes. That's the time I remember the MP for Nakuru, is it Nakuru East, who was the chair of energy. Yes. he told me, then, but any time you start talking on matters, economy and finance, we will listen, even if we don't like what you're saying. So what I'm saying in a nutshell is that this parliament, you may like what you see or hate it, but the truth is that we are more, in my view, we are more liberated. People will always follow party lines. Okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And it happens everywhere. Look at what is happening in the US. You almost predict a vote even before a vote is taken. Yeah. So it is not unique to Kenya. I also want to share that there could have been certain things that we could have done differently. Yeah. The only controversial issue, if you ask me, that the 12th Parliament dealt with, very controversial, was the fuel levy. The issue of VAT on fuel. Yeah. That is the only controversial issue, and that is the only time that I've had Kenyans condemn Parliament. Yeah. On the issue of BBI, whether Constituent says that we got instructions from where, but the first time since I came to Parliament, the only bill, apart from the bill that was anchoring the National Accord after the post-election violence, and we know why that passed with the 2/3 majority. Yeah. The only other case where we have realized a 2/3 majority, which has eluded us. Remember when we wanted to set the local tribunal, President Kibaki, Raila Odinga, Kalonzo, Ruto, everybody, Uhuru Kenyatta were in Parliament, but we still didn't get 2/3. BBI is the only bill that was passed in Parliament with the 2/3 majority. So you cannot say that people were coerced, blackmailed, bribed. If it was a bribery, then it was so massive that we cannot, all the other things that even any legislation where the executive has had interest cannot attract 2/3 majority. BBI did. The fate of BBI, I think, is now the past. I don't want to dwell on it so much. But to me, the only controversial legislation, so to speak, has been that one on fuel.
But how did you miss that one?
We didn't miss it. Can I tell you something about it, which I think also Kenyans missed? You see, the truth is that we, as a House, rejected VAT on fuel. The President wanted it at 16%. Now, the issue came about because IMF had given conditions to this country. That's a fact, that we need to start taxing most of our basic commodities. And they were very particular on fuel. But because of the discussions, we ended up with it at 8%. Otherwise, it would have been at 16%. Okay. But we negotiated, because if the President decided, and we were not going to raise 2/3 anyway, to defeat it, we had to negotiate from 16 to 8%. And that is the only thing that I would tell you, as a matter of fact. And then the latest of the amendments to the elections law, where the Tanga side were against the creation of a coalition
bill.
That is but the others could just be individual differences. I don't agree with this, I agree with this. Unlike the 11th Parliament, where security laws were pushed down our throats. In fact, the courts had to save us. Okay. So, if you ask me about 12th Parliament, really, you are asking about the scales, although I'm not a believer in these scales. They are very, but maybe 6 to 7, as Honorable Constituent.
Okay. Yes. Nyakundi, why did you give such a low score? This is now your chance to elaborate.
Yeah, thank you very much. First, let me appreciate Waishimo in what they're saying, that there's a lot of work that we don't see that Parliament has done, and I give it to them. And that's why I said that if you look at the Hansard, really, there is a lot of work. And Mheshimiwa said that a number of times we have actually rewarded him for the good work he's doing, and we are telling him to keep going in whatever capacity he'll be taking up after this. To be honest with you, we do this because we represent also citizens. And if you look at the work of Mzalendo, is that we listen to what people are saying. When it comes to the bills that are coming into the House, the questions that are put, we put them on our online and social media platforms, and we see the kind of comments that are coming in. One, I wish to say this, there are quite a number of very critical bills that have lapsed during this period. And when I say critical bills, I mean bills that for people, and I consider the special interest groups who we speak to and who we try to advance, and ensuring that their interests are also factored when these kind of policy decisions are being made. Some of the decisions, some of the bills that have been lost, or rather during this period, but it did not mention about the two-thirds gender bill. I mean, there have been a number of items, a number of bills, I think around 3, I could be wrong, but there have been those attempts, but all those attempts have never yielded any fruit. And you remember this kept coming out of a Supreme Court decision saying that Parliament was given 60 days to actually implement that kind of a legislation. Then it failed. And then the CJ then, Justice Maraga, took it upon himself to actually declare the Parliament as then was, as then is now. Of course, they've gone for recess, Sunday. But then as then was to be unconstitutional. So that is that for me was a blot also in terms of the push and pull, so that when we have Parliament fighting with the judiciary and all that, that becomes a push and shove that really is not healthy for a nation. We expect these institutions to sit together and give us solutions. We have our constitutional provisions. As we sit, we need to see that constitutional provision implemented in the Constitution. It doesn't matter how, we just want to see a solution from the two institutions. And that is why we have given them that power to do it. But look at also the representation of the special interest groups bill. I think that was lost also at some point. That was a bill that could have really taken care of the interest of these groups. And I want to lump them all together because the interests are many, and I wouldn't want to go into the details of what would have happened. There is also the issue of the political party primaries bill. I think this was a bill that was forwarded by Honorable Maura. There was a debate, and then at some point, I think it was stuck at the National Assembly. So these are bills that we looked at towards changing a landscape for a certain group, especially in the participation of politics. Related closely to that is the election campaign financing. I think this is where we've differed from the 2013 when we passed the legislation on election campaign financing. And we can see the ripple of effect of having unregulated money in our campaigns today. In our last report on the study on the cost of politics in Kenya, for you to stand as a member of parliament, you need actually around an average of around 40 million. So if you ask yourself how many people can afford to stand for a member of parliament with that kind of money, you realize that we are leaving politics to a select few. That's the reason why we've always been pushing that let us regulate the money that is used in corruption. And that helps us in twofold. That one, we will be able to cap these corruption loopholes that we're talking about, because those who fund you ask for something back. They need kickbacks. So then you are tied upon looking for contracts using backdoor ways to reward the cronies. But also, as I have highlighted, that you lock out the most vulnerable groups from participating in elections because they cannot raise this kind of money that is required to participate in elections.
Okay.
But also, lastly, Trevor, allow me, please. I would want to highlight that in our analysis, we have seen that even when it comes to the issue of corruption, a number of corruption bills were lost in the House or have not actually, they have actually lapsed within this House. And I could quickly highlight, Ndidi Njoro had a bill that is on the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act to make it very punitive in terms of fines, because we keep complaining out here that people are let loose in terms of, they are just given a slap on the wrist when they go to court on corruption offenses. But that bill was again lost in the House. We're talking about the lifestyle audits. We keep pointing fingers saying somebody is so wealthy, whatever. We don't know where that money comes from. The courts have been on record and have been held a number and frozen a number of accounts due to unexplainable assets. We needed Parliament to back the courts by providing them a lifestyle audits bill so that they are able to have a comprehensive framework in terms of ensuring that they are able to nail down these people. And I can go on. There are a number of amendments. I am a lawyer, but I would have wanted the amendment, the miscellaneous amendment for disclosures, especially for lawyers under the Process of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act, to ensure that we seal all those loopholes that are being used in terms of ensuring the work goes forward. But also, when I speak and I give them a low score, is because of the small highlights that remain in the heads and in the minds of our people, so that when they come to us and we are talking about these bills and we are talking about legislative work, they also keep saying that this is a partisan house. It will make decisions based on this, and who are the funders of, for example, championing a bill or a motion, then Parliament will make a decision based on that.
Okay.
And Honorable Mbadi could bear me witness that there are scenarios that have been, I've left a blot on the House. And if I could just highlight one of them is the sugar investigation by Parliament.
Yeah.
How that was handled in this House, I think, painted a very grim picture in terms of how people foresee when committees sit and discuss certain issues and the outcome of all that.
All right.
Thank you, Trevor.
And those are very interesting points being raised by Nyakundi, Honorable Kositany. Do you think there are certain aspects where members of Parliament have been lenient on bills that are most likely going to affect them? This is the same Parliament that was supposed to be dissolved, according to the Supreme Court directions by former Chief Justice Emeritus David Maraga.
Trevor, I think when a matter comes before the House, you have to actually think of the pros and cons. What affects? When you talk of dissolving Parliament, what is the effect on the country? What is the effect on our current economic status? Would we afford to dissolve Parliament and go into a snap election? And those are the many things that that have to be considered. But also, Trevor, we are coming from a setup whereby government has misused, or the executive has misused the powers that they have. And it becomes very risky to pass some laws when you still have the kind of system that we have, whereby corruption has been personalized. If somebody doesn't like the way you walk, they just decide unleash KRA on Kositany, get a tax bill on Badi. Whether it is true or not, he'll deal with the effects later. There was even a proposal, radical proposal. I would like to know who gave that proposal, that if you have a tax case, you deposit 50% of the disputed amount in a non-profit...
that was from Treasury.
Somebody from Treasury proposed that. I would really like that person to be made public, so that Kenyans study and we try and see what is in this guy's mind. So when we legislate, there are some things that we would want to pass, but you ask yourself, if I pass it, how will it affect me? How will it affect the people I represent? So those are the things that maybe Nyakundi will give us a low score on, but we think out we think out hard on those issues. On the issue that my good friend here, Honorable Mbadi, raised about the tax, especially the fuel tax, when the president was proposing for 16%, that is the time when Parliament came together. But I remember, and it needs to be put on record, that it was our own Kimani Ichung'wah who actually raised the issue and actually caused that we went for a negotiation, because we said, honestly, we represent people and we cannot go back home to the people and say, we have just come from Parliament and we have said your fuel goes up by 16% because of the tax.
Yeah.
I just fueled this morning. When I was
with the new prices.
With the new prices, the vehicle is diesel and 140 shillings per litre. And I had an engagement with the pump attendant, and he's so knowledgeable. He's saying, no, the government should reduce the taxes. Hii pesa mingi inaenda kwa serikali for purposes of, actually he said wanatafuta pesa ya campaign. So government needs to review the issues of fuel because it's really hurting Kenyans. We need if need be, and Parliament has adjourned Sindai, but if need be, we will require a special sitting in order to actually look at the critical issue of the fuel prices. The other thing, Trevor, is it is sad that at this time, at this economic moment, at this environment that we are in, KRA is still going to shut down an industry which is being run 100% by Kenyans. It is sad that we wake up this morning to hear that Keroche has been shut down because of a dispute of 300 million. When we are being told in the papers that we can't account for 12 billion, we have 70 billion that we have borrowed that is unaccounted for, it has gone to no infrastructure, but we're closing a factory that is employing over 400 Kenyans. If each of those 400 Kenyans are employed as a family of 10, we are talking about 40,000 people that we have put their lives in jeopardy just because of a tax claim that can be sorted out. So I think those are the things that we, as Kenya Kwanza, when we come in, we shall give priority. Everybody must pay tax. If you are doing business, you must pay tax. But if you run into problems, then let us cushion everybody, treat everybody equally, and not because of political inclination. It's actually very sad that Keroche, a Kenyan-owned company, 100% Kenyan-owned company, is running into problems when we will find time to put in billions of shillings into Kenya Airways, which is making losses year in, year out. But Keroche here is trying. I mean, the fact that somebody has taken the risk of, and I was even sad to learn that the KRA went and wrote to banks, all banks that do not do business with Keroche. I think it's actually very sad.
Okay. Honorable Badi, this perceived political warfare, is that reason enough not to have passed the anti-corruption bill, the lifestyle audit bill, like what Nyakundi is raising? That it could potentially be weaponized against yourselves as the legislators?
I do believe that we have an independent judiciary. At least now we have seen cases where judiciary has made rulings and judgments which are against the government or the establishment. So I have no doubts that our judiciary would play politics. It is true that a government may misuse the powers bestowed on government, and that is why
the way this government
it is said that I'm not sure about that, but it has been said that when you are passing laws, make sure you pass laws that you can entrust with your worst enemy. So that I want to agree with. But I don't think that that is what has informed the failure to pass some of these anti-corruption laws. Actually, I also brought a lifestyle audit bill at one point, and which was politicized and made to appear like I was capping contributions to church. But I said, any contribution that you make, disclose. How you have got the money. Whether you're making it to church or you're making it to a wedding ceremony, just make disclosure. That is what I was saying in a nutshell. But my friends thought we were targeting the church and they wanted to make it a religious issue. They're forgetting that I'm a very staunch Seventh-day Adventist. But I want to just agree with Nyakundi to some extent that, well, we didn't manage to pass certain critical legislations. And that is why I'm saying Parliament is a going concern. It is going to be there, and that in Parliament we should pick from where we have left. On the issue of campaign financing, really I don't think you should blame Parliament 100%. It was IBC that delayed with the regulations. The law is clear that the regulations is supposed to come before a certain set deadline. Then they bring it at the end, yet they had 5 years. So to me, I think also IBC didn't want maybe these regulations to be in place. I'm personally one of the people who believe that we should not spend so much money in our campaigns. We should just spend money on logistics and facilitate our movements here and there, but we should not buy political offices. And I believe that if you send your agenda very well, people would vote you in. When I came in 2007, I was branded as the most poor candidate among the 10, and I managed to win over 43% of the votes. The others shared 57%, 9 of them. So I believe if you sell your agenda very well and you do it in a well-coordinated manner, you don't have to spend so much. On the gender equation, I want to be very categorical. Unless we amend our constitution, we will not get it. We passed some laws here just to be seen that Parliament has passed something, saying political parties, their list should respect gender principle, that if your list is not having a third,
the court ruled against
but the court went and declared that unconstitutional. So unless we go back to the basic law, the Constitution, there is no country in the world which has realized gender parity with the kind of election that we have, the election arrangement. If you go to those countries which have realized the two-thirds gender rule, or even more, they have mixed member representation. There is first past the post, like we do it in Kenya, because if you are telling people to elect someone by going to the ballot and elect that person, you can again not condition them to a particular gender or a specific gender. But you can create two systems where people are allowed to vote for their representatives directly because they like Honorable Kositani and they want him to represent them. And then also create an avenue where people vote for parties, and those parties pick for gender based on party lines. So that the moment you vote for the party and the party qualifies, then the party already has a pre-prepared list before the election, which is known. You know very well that if I vote for party X, the person who is going to represent me is so and so, so and so. And then we get that gender parity. But the way we are talking about it, we will hold meetings in hotels and castigate and condemn Parliament. But if we don't go to the basic structure where we talked about this article in the Constitution, this principle, but we must actualize it. Let me just wind up by saying I don't want now to talk much about the fuel pricing, because really I think this fuel pricing is a mixture of many things. It's not just here where we have this problem. You go to the neighboring countries, Uganda and Tanzania, the prices are even higher than it is. But where it has reached is something that should cause us concern, because it's causing inflation. And but again, Parliament has done something. We just passed, Trevor, before we left, a 15 billion shillings fuel subsidy. If we did not subsidize fuel in this country, the price would be more than what it is today, even what was announced yesterday, by another 30 shillings. So let us face it. Is it even sustainable to continue with this system? That is a debate that Kenyans need to. The 8%, which is the tax, the VAT. Maybe you may think of removing other taxes like excise duty, but VAT 8%, and it's not covering other levies. It's not so significant. I have done that math. It's about 6-8 shillings. It's not going to change the price so significantly. We need to think on how now to the energy sector in this country. And the whole world, by the way, is now discussing the issue of energy sector. This war in Ukraine has opened the eyes of the whole world. And they are thinking and they are talking. And even Europe, you can see over-relied and over-dependent on Russia for fuel, both gas and other petroleum products. On the issue of Keroche, maybe I don't want... If anyone can use government agencies to settle political scores, I don't support it. The only thing I would also add, Keroche has had issues with the KRA for long. I think it is high time they fixed it. I don't think KRA would just be targeting Keroche. Even before the lady started running as a UDA candidate, I think she had issues. And she has had these issues for long. But again, as we push the ordinary person, you and I, who if you don't pay taxes, Trevor, today, you will be hit with serious penalties. So should these big companies, multinationals, and our local companies, which are huge, they are getting money from Kenyans. Let them pay what is due to the government in terms of taxes. But if someone is using KRA, that would be very, very unfortunate. KRA should be apolitical and should do its work professionally.
I'll come back to both of you to talk about the sugar scandal report and what your thoughts are, because you are in there. So you tell us what really happened there. But let me bring in Nyakundi back on this. Nyakundi, you're the one who raised this sugar scandal report and the twist that was there. How would you have wanted it handled from the Mzalendo Trust perspective, and even from what the people you said when you asked them about this? Nyakundi, unmute your microphone and unmute your microphone first. We cannot hear you.
Sorry, Trevor,
Yes.
this technology. Right. One, I wouldn't want to restrict it to the sugar issue.
Yeah.
The sugar issue, and Honorable Mbadi will tell you, and Kosetania sitting there, that the way it was handled was very bad. It came out as a very partisan. There were a lot of exchanges in terms of allegations. When it came to the report, and Honorable Mbadi, sorry, I love criticizing Mbadi, and also we reward him in the equal measure, that they led in the onslaught and throwing away of the report wholesome. In our thinking, and what the public would have expected is that if there were challenges and issues with that kind of a report, then it could have been better if the members would have recommended a way forward. If the report was not adequate and comprehensive enough, then they could have requested for more time to debate on that report, request for all those witnesses that they thought warranted the room to defend themselves, and then come out with a comprehensive report on the investigation with concrete recommendations on the way forward. That going forward. The other element is that, and this has been coming out, and I think the Speaker was on record and saying there is a way, there needs to be a conduct of how members of Parliament conduct themselves when they are carrying out this kind of inquiries. In the process, when they are doing this, they are actually an investigative arm, and at the same adjudicate on those kind of matters that find themselves in the Parliament spaces. As such, there is some high level of decorum that is required for members of Parliament. Even walking and seeing, laughing, hugging, and making these banters with the people you are investigating really casts a very bad light to the committees and how they carry out work. And some of the recommendations that we have come out saying, and maybe it's because we feel the Powers and Privileges Committee has not been strong enough to sanction this kind of behavior, is that then we need a committee that happens in other jurisdictions. For example, if you look at the UK, they have an ethics committee that is bipartisan, where members are different members, and even it has members that are not parliamentary members that listen to this kind of issues that they come from. Now, if you ask me, the Speaker recommended then that there should be an investigation, and if forwarded, I think the matter was referred to the EACC. But the conclusion and all of that, how it was concluded, and that's why I keep saying that the people we speak to will ask you that if this kind of a serious investigation like this will just end in shambles, what of this? So then that comes out with the law score that I give. But I would invite Mbadi to, shed further light on the incidences. But how how Parliament runs its committee and investigations has left a lot of questions, because in essence, most of these happen also behind cameras that we don't get to see each and every day of these inquiries. So we expect Parliament to look, the committees and the members of Parliament to carry themselves with a certain level of dignity. Okay.
Thank you. Let's start with you before I go to Mbadi. What really happened with the sugar scandal report? There were allegations of MPs being bribed. There was all sorts of allegations are flying by. As an insider, what really happened there?
Well, I think there was a lot of outside interference and forces, as Nyakundi has put it, not caught on camera, that went on. We know for a very long time the issues of sugar and having cartels and all is not something new. It didn't start with this parliament or with the last. It has always been there. Sugar has been an issue all through, and it has proved to be a very lucrative business. And I personally feel that that is one area where we failed as parliamentarians in the way we handled the whole issue. We did not treat the matter with the seriousness that it deserved. We did not actually analyze all the information that we had and put it into practice and sieved it. We actually allowed we listen to other outside forces. And when you talk about bribery and all, we have no proof. But when you see the behavior, you know, body language tells a lot of things. You can see somebody coming into parliament and certain people who are not very commonly seen within parliament. But there are some individuals, when you see them appearing in the National Assembly, you start wondering what is on the agenda today. What has brought Kositani to the floor of the House today and is not in a hurry, or Mbadi for that matter? I think it is a matter where we failed Kenyans. I feel sorry. We really need to apologize on that. But it's a matter that needs to be revisited by the 13th Parliament. And going forward, and as Nyakundi has put it, we did a review on the standing orders and of Parliament. And I think going forward, the 13th Parliament will be even more accountable. And we pray that in the Kenya Kwanza government, we shall let Parliament enjoy and exercise its independence to the fullest of time, so that we may have Parliament giving out reports that are concrete, reports that are consumable, reports that are verifiable, and reports that will benefit everybody. And I think it also boils down to the fight against corruption, that we actually need to be genuine when we are dealing with matters, because it is so sad. When you look at, I don't represent a sugar growing area, but slowly I've seen Uasin Gishu has also taken up sugar growing. It is a crop that you have to wait for 18 months to its maturity stage, then harvesting. To get to harvest sugar now in Kenya, you have to get a license from the purchasing factory to tell you now you can harvest your sugar, we are ready to receive it. The farmers go through a lot of trouble to wait for their benefits. And it is sad that we have a cartel that sits somewhere and just decides now we're going to cause an artificial shortage, allow importation, and kill the local industry. So I think it is a matter that requires a serious discussion. And we feel that we failed the Kenyans on that, and it should be taken to an upper scale in the next parliament.
But is that where the 12th parliament also failed, in your view?
But for me, I want to take up this argument from the point of integrity of the House or Houses of Parliament. I think if our integrity can be questioned, then Kenyans have a reason to worry. And I think, to me, the lowest moment in this matter was when the integrity of the House was put to test. And there were allegations and accusations flying around. I hope, and I want to believe that no member of Parliament could be bribed with 10,000 shillings or 30,000 shillings. Really, that would be a tragedy for our nation. But again, also, sometimes we make allegations and we fail to substantiate them. Sometimes when we don't find our way, then we make very wild allegations that Kositani, who has just voted this way, has been bribed, and without any evidence. I remember when when I was a member of Public Accounts Committee, we were taken to EACC, all of us, even those who did not even, whose allegations were not even made against us. Someone just said some members were bribed, and he mentioned a few members. Then all of us who are members, we went to EACC. And when I went there, I was asked, do you know Ababu Namwam? Do you know his rural home? I mean, complete nonsense. And I asked them, is this why you have called me here? So sometimes when we make allegations, we should know we are making allegations that touch on the integrity of the House. So Ethics Committee is very critical. We have Powers and Privileges Committee, but I think we need to have Ethics Committee to deal with this matter. But allow me just to get back to this report of the sugar report. The genesis of this report, Trevor, was the suspicion that Kenyans are consuming bad sugar.
Contaminated with bad
Contaminated. And so that was the objective of the investigation. Parliament and parliamentary procedures dictate that when you are given an investigation to carry out, you carry out an investigation within the confines of that objective. You can now digress to other matters after tackling the objective, which was to find out whether we have contaminated sugar in this country or not, and who has brought that sugar. Now, when these two committees, and it was the two committees, by the way, when the two committees went to do investigation, you will recall, Trevor, that the two chairs, the co-chairs, were supposed to move and second the motion. One of the chairs who was supposed to second the motion disappeared. What does that tell you about the report? Then now when you get to the report, you find the report has completely veered off from the objective. Instead of telling us the cartels, the sugar cartels, who have imported contaminated sugar, who have repackaged imported sugar into local package, were let off the hook. And we get information that probably committees were compromised. You know, and then now you bring in the CS. By the way, the CS treasury they were bringing in was not my preferred. It was not even in my side of the political divide. But I was asking, yes, the CS gave authority for importation of sugar because the law requires that is the only one who can give that authority. Yeah. And then the time he was giving the authority, he got information written from the Ministry of Agriculture that we don't have enough sugar. What would be a responsible cabinet secretary? Today, I'm probably aspiring to be one of the cabinet secretaries. If I'm made the cabinet secretary for finance, and I'm told, and a cabinet has sat and has recommended that we import sugar, and then I go ahead and sign, then I'm now being told to take responsibility because somebody has flooded the market beyond what. You know, we have to be fair to also government officials, because then we would not have government officials who would not take up these positions. We need competent Kenyans to take up these positions, and so we cannot be vindictive. Okay. For me, the only concern I had is when it came out later, that probably some of us were making contributions based on compromised positions. Yeah. But personally, as John Badi, and I can stand by what I said, that we lost the investigation from the committee. And so it can be picked up later. But again, a lot has also been done in the sugar sector. We have even passed an act of parliament through Wafula Wamunyinyi, that has addressed some of these issues. The issue of sugar sector needs to be addressed in a very comprehensive manner. Okay. Thank you.
So that is one thing that the 13th Parliament should pick up.
All right. I think to add on that, yes. Trevor, you know, when we discussed that sugar issue, there were comments that were made by people in government. In fact, it was actually the Minister for Interior who actually brought up that issue that we have contaminated sugar. And you know, it's very important as Kenyans, when you occupy a certain position, the words you speak have a spiral effect on every aspect of our economy. Yeah. We also failed to take to task the Minister for Internal Security, Mr. Matiang'i, on those allegations he made. And he also actually avoided, I think he dodged the committee. He never actually came to substantiate those claims. And I think, as Badia said, a lot has been done, but that matter still is hanging out there in the air. It needs actually to be dealt with. Okay. So that going into the future, people don't just go and make statements, and maybe because you have met somebody and you said, if you make these statements, this is the package that we'll benefit from, so that we may guard the integrity of Parliament and also the integrity of the executive as we go forward. Okay.
Let me bring in Philip Jakundi on this as you close up on this conversation. We're winding up now. What should the 13th Parliament learn? And considering also there was a whole fiasco about panic having gripped in the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission after Parliament adjourned sine die without enacting a set of laws. But very briefly, just about a minute, what should the 13th Parliament now learn from the 12th Parliament?
One, Trevor, I think there are a few lessons to learn, very good, and some very bad, and some just in between. But one, I wish to commend the 12th House. There are some critical bills that have been passed, and some of them have been quite a challenge. In the times that we live in, the mental health bill was quite something, a relief to come. We had what the president was talking about in terms of the mental health, the status of the country. So we needed that bill so that we live in the times in the realities that we are in. The T bill is quite also a bill, a very recommendable bill that was passed in the House. And lastly, to cap it all, is the small claims court. I think maybe we take it, we don't take it for granted that Parliament passed that bill. And now, even if you're not a lawyer, you can actually represent yourself in the small claims court. And the court is very quick in terms of processing these kind of claims. And we know in a society where we handle our disputes properly, that is a prosperous society. But and again, other highlights, one was the adoption of the Swahili standing orders. I think that was a highlight in this House. It's something that has not been well said, and maybe government has not, Parliament has not taken credit about it. But in terms of the learning lessons, I think one of it is the issue of the rejection of the SRC chairperson then. Yeah. I think it is in this House that we saw a very senior person being rejected on the basis of integrity grounds.
Okay.
And that was a huge bonus when it came from that committee, and that report was adopted, that Chumo was rejected as the chair for SRC. I think that was sending a message, and we'd wish Parliament to continue doing that, to ensure that when it does its oversight role, when it is vetting, it does a very thorough job, so that when it gives those names to the president, then we know there are people with the qualities that are required under Chapter 6 of the Constitution.
Okay.
But going forward, there's also need to amend that act on a parliamentary appointment oversight. That act should be amended to ensure that nobody takes advantage of the 14 days within which the committees have to go through the names. I think that part should be amended so that there can be no mischief, so that somebody can just undergo vetting without even that committee really sitting. That, I think, should be carried forward into the 13th House. But also, maybe another lesson, just lastly, Trevor, to say, is we've had 24 bills that were declared unconstitutional during this period. I think if you look at an average period of legislative making, you would come to around almost 3 to 4 months to do a bill. And we have highlighted, like now the National Assembly sat like 341 sittings. So you can imagine what it takes to come out with one bill that becomes an act. It's quite a lot of time and energy and resources spent. So there is need to learn from that judgment. I know it is the Supreme Court, but there is need for harmony for the two houses to ensure that we don't have bills being declared unconstitutional after they have gone through the whole process.
All right, Kositan, very briefly, what would you like to see going forward?
I think what I would like to see going forward is the independence of Parliament. The true independence of Parliament, the true independence of the judiciary and the police, the National Police Service, the DCI, the EACC, and all independent agencies to actually be given room. Like as we said, we need to give them an accounting officer, give them their funds, and so that they don't have to be rushing to Treasury, rushing to the executive to plead for funds. The other most important issue is I would like to see a situation whereby, I know Parliament is a place whereby all politicians come together, but I would like to see that the 13th Parliament and any other Parliament going forward, we set aside our political differences and even our party loyalties and deal with issues that affect the people across the board, so that irrespective of what your party leader thinks, but if you think this matter needs to be prosecuted in a certain way, then go to Parliament and exercise your role so that we may actually take this country forward. And lastly is, let us also ensure that going forward, let us help this country. Let us all be in the front line. Wherever, let us all be whistleblowers, and genuine whistleblowers, whereby you see any activity of corruption, please be a whistleblower, even as a legislator.
All right. Honorable Madi, as we close also on the IBC issue, the election laws, there was an allegation that Parliament delayed.
Thank you. But really, where was the IBC with all these things before? You know, the legislation comes from the agency to the government and to Parliament. I think if there are any laws that they still needed for this election, they must have brought it at a time that Parliament should have not dealt with it. The same Kenyans would have questioned why we are in a rush to pass laws and we're just heading to election. And then you'll hear Kenyans in their style that the election is being rigged, etc. So I think that let's do things differently going forward. On some of the few issues that I would mention is that I think we need to create more time for private members' bills. Even if it is a matter of increasing and creating another extra sitting day, we should do that. Because so many private members come up with very good bills that sometimes go unattended to. You listen to Nyakundi, and I want to to urge and encourage Nyakundi to always criticize us where it is necessary. I'm not going to be in the next parliament, and I think my brother as well, but parliament will still be there. I want to see where we pass some anti-corruption laws, I mean amendments to our anti-corruption laws to limit the time it takes to hear anti-corruption cases. It should not take forever.
Yeah.
We should ask you the moment you are mentioned in corruption to step out of office and fix the timeline. If it is 1 year, let it be 1 year. If we can try election petitions within a specified time period, why can't we do the same with anti-corruption laws? And that can be done so that it deters. You know, people, what Kenyans say is it doesn't matter. I will use money to prolong this case until probably I die.
Yeah.
So that is something that we need to check and work on. My final comment would be that I think we have done our part as a parliament, 12th parliament.
Yeah.
I wish well the 13th parliament. As minority leader, I pride myself that I brought more visibility to that office.
Okay.
And so the areas where probably I didn't live to the expectations of Kenyans, I say sorry, that probably was where I could hit at the moment. Kenyans also, I know they would appreciate hits and not just misses.
Okay.
So where I hit, I've hit.
All right.
Let another person come in and also deliver.
Yeah.
Either as majority leader or minority leader.
How different is it for you not running for office now? Just one word. Is it any different?
It is different because it is strange. You know, I never imagined that I would be in a position, not at this moment, not to run for an office. But I believe that I can still make a contribution in this country, in other spheres.
All right.
Yes.
Honorable John Badi, thank you so much for making time. Minority Leader Caleb Kositany, Member of Parliament for Soy, and Philip Nyakundi, Mzalendo Trust, Head of Policy and Partnerships. So let's run this feedback really quick before we make way for Shadaboy and Anthony Njenga, who's a counseling psychologist and mental health advocate. They're talking about health and lifestyle in just a short while. Let's read some of the feedback really quick. We have Chalo Woodrose. He says the current parliament has failed terribly in protecting common Kenyan. It's very unfortunate that the cost of living has risen under their watch. They have done nothing in controlling the cost of fuel in the country that is increasing every now and then. Score is 4 out of 10. Okay, next. Bob Otieno says first term 12th parliament performed well because there was unity, more so among Jubilee, but come second term, poor performance because of division due to succession politics. I give them a 6 out of 10, and 13th parliament should learn from it. Okay, next. Engineer Lazaro says 12th parliament really tried. Their legislative performance is average. Honorable Kositany should be reminded that BBI is only a bill that attracted attention of common wananchi and our development partners. All right, next. Atanas Mavuti says the 12th parliament has performed dismally. As the cost of living went up in their watch, they couldn't come up with laws which could have cushioned the citizens. I give both houses a score of 3.5. Frank Orinde says Kositany is blaming the opposition for the failures of the 12th parliament. Ask him what they, Jubilee, did between 2013 and 2017 with the tyranny of numbers. Aren't they the same leaders that passed the draconian security amendment bill? Okelo Mwalimu says 12th parliament scored highly on number of legislative pieces passed 8 out of 10, but performed dismally on implementation of constitution, especially on two-thirds gender rule, 3 out of 10. On a more positive note, they did better than the 11th on approval of state officers. All right. Thank you so much for that engagement. We're making way for Shadaboy now. They're talking about the health and lifestyle. Mental health is the issue, right? See you in just a bit.